Welcome back to Einstein Media Center, your one-stop shop for all unnecessary media dissection. Today we are joined by a very special guest as always. Please give a big welcome to Tony from the band Space Weather, hailing all the way from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Tony, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you very much for having me on.
Yeah, of course, of course. Do you mind giving a little bit of an introduction of who you are and how the band came together and what's brought you all up to this point in 2026 now?
Sure. Yeah, so Space Weather was founded by me. In 2018, I really wanted to start a band. I didn't know where to turn, so I grew up playing the drums, ended up playing guitar in like high school. I've always sang, and so 2018, I had a lot of song ideas, and I just started writing them. Reached out to some recording studios, and recorded what is known as our self-titled EP. I recorded that all by myself and wrote it all. So I recorded it with Chris Crummett back in April of 2018. At the time, I didn't know what I was doing as far as like releasing things and media and like the content side of being a band. But yeah, fast forward to now, I have a full band. I have people that I still do the majority of the songwriting. I'm still the main songwriter, but I do have a drummer and two guitarists, and they all help contribute. So we recorded an LP a couple years ago, released that in 2023, and we are currently sitting on LP2.
So, okay, awesome. So with that, I know 2025, Wasted in Heaven, your first single in a few years. Is that something that is going to be ending up on LP2?
Yes and no. So in August of 2024, we recorded two singles with Chris Crummett. These were the first songs that featured my drummer Jake and my guitarist Cody. They both came with me into the studio, helped me record some parts, and Wasted in Heaven was one of them. And then we have another single that we haven't released yet. And while we are still on the fence of whether or not that second single is going to be an LP2, we do have ideas for two of these singles that essentially we would like to re-release Wasted in Heaven and re-release the second single somewhere down the line with guest vocals. Basically, we have a version of the song that already exists, and then we would like to feature some artists that we like on those two singles in the future.
I'm going to pry. Is there any chance you could potentially leak who that may or may not be?
I can't say, only because like we're still figuring some stuff out. What I will say is the people that we have in mind are not people that are currently in like the post-hardcore, like progressive post-hardcore scene. They're artists that are in completely different genres, but they are bigger artists essentially. I'll say one of them is from a different country, not from the United States. So yeah, and I think the reason we want to do that is because we just have so many influences outside of the normal, what you would expect in the sphere of like post-hardcore, and I want to reflect that even with our guest artists too sometimes. So
let's talk about that, because I definitely see that in your music. I know you get kind of put into the post-hardcore scene a lot, but especially, even on your first album, you could hear a lot of influences from progressive rock, progressive metal, and even two very different genres. Like a lot of the guitar riffs are very influenced by things like metalcore, but it's also in some sense uncompromising with like very pop forward hooks. So can you talk a little bit about maybe the headspace that you get in when you're writing this music? Like, what is the vibe you're going for, and when you're bringing all these disparate ideas together, how do you make one cohesive song and then 12, 15 cohesive songs to make an album?
yeah, that's a good question. Well, so when I was in college, I was in this metalcore band called Royal Revise. Very August Burns Red forward as far as like the style of riffs and metalcore and like the breakdowns and stuff like that. And I remember my senior year of college, I started listening to Chon. I didn't know that was like, I think Grow, I believe that's the name of their first album, just came out. And I was just, head over heels with it, because in my mind, I was like, oh, there are these intricate single string riffs. Like, dude, they're doing harmonies, but at the same time, like, they're clean guitars. And I was already well versed in that in the world of metal. So I think a lot of that carries over as far as like very early origins of like space weather writing. We have a song called Sadness where in between the singing, there is on the chorus, there is a single style riff that, I'll just write. And as far as like songwriting goes, I'll write one riff and not even think about anything else. I won't think about the drums. I won't think about what the vocals are doing. I just write a riff that I think it sounds cool. And from there, if I think that a harmony sounds good with it, I'll start building it. And the harmony is going to be crazy depending on what the original riff is doing, because I'm not thinking about what the harmony is going to be until afterwards. So it's going to be a mix of mixing thirds and sixes and octaves all together to be, this crazy thing. But as far as, trying to put that all into something cohesive for a song, it really just depends on so many other factors, like, because I'll have a lot of melodies written too that also exist without the idea of a guitar riff or anything behind it. And really, sometimes it depends if the guitar riff comes first or if the melody comes first into the building blocks of a song. But it's usually one of those two things that I end up building the entire song around, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do go for the pop centric vocals for sure. I'm always into a hook. I want to write something that I listen back to and like I just like start repeating it over and over again because it's addictive to me, because if it's addictive to me, it's got to be, it's got to hook on to somebody else too, right? So
now, do you happen to have like a love for pop music, or is it, just other bands that, maybe were in like the rock or punk or whatever genres growing up that you're looking to, that like, I've noticed they always have these hooks, and that's what always captured me. Like, what are you really pulling from there?
Oh gosh, I mean, I guess it's both. I do love pop music a lot. I have days where some days I'm like listening to super heavy music all day, and other days I'm listening to Ariana Grande. Sometimes I'm listening to country just a little bit. But honestly, I just grab inspiration from wherever, and melodies often come to me at the weirdest times too. I mean, I wrote the guitar riff and like the melody for Sadness, for example, going back to that. I wrote both of those while I was grocery shopping. And I think it's the idea of doing something so monotonous sometimes where my best ideas come from, because my body's just in autopilot mode. Like I'm doing a thing that I know I have to do. And I think the fact that is happening and I'm bored, and while I'm bored, I'm getting like these insanely creative ideas. And the biggest challenge with it is just holding on to those ideas until I get home and I can actually put that down into an audio file,
With having band members have joined the band now, I know you said you're still the primary songwriter, but has having new people in the band and understanding what maybe their strengths are changed the way you're now approaching writing your music?
Yeah, absolutely. My one guitarist, Devin, he is really good at writing just really crazy riffs, but they typically don't have a context associated with them. He actually we have a song called Silent Hex, and that song starts with a single guitar riff, and he actually wrote that. And I was able to write an entire song out of that riff. He's really good at making these super creative pieces that, for me, I'm able to contextualize that and put that into a song, into a structure, get a drum beat behind it. And Jake and Cody, they're the ones who joined me for recording Wasted in Heaven and our unnamed single. But they're both different kinds of metalheads. They like bands like Periphery and Lamb of God. And their writing is definitely a lot different than mine. But it really helps our overall sound. It helped expand our overall sound. Actually, the second single that is unreleased is written mostly by Cody. I helped him again put the song together. I'm good at creating the structure for the song as far as like verse, chorus, breakdown, and how that all plays out. But he did the heavy writing for that song, and you could definitely tell it's a departure from a lot of what people would expect from us. I know like our EP can be described, we have some indie influences in there, a lot of cleaner guitars. Jaded and Dreaming, our first LP, was more post-hardcore. This is like something that is in the terms of like post-hardcore and metalcore, grabbing influences from bands like Periphery and like Era, if that makes sense. And that was a challenge for me to sing on at first because I'm so used to writing lyrics to music that I make, that I've already made. I've already made the guitars, so I already have an idea of like what the melody's going to be like. But instead, I was given something, and I have to write a brand new melody off of that. And it was challenging, but it sounds really good. So, in a way, I guess you could say that the stars kind of aligned as far as like our songwriting strengths coming together to make something unique.
Given that you started Space Weather, and I'll refer to it as kind of like your baby from 2018.
For sure, it's definitely it's my brainchild for sure.
How has it felt to kind of loosen the reins and let other people have their songs, their songwriting influence the direction of the project? How has that been, like, letting go for you?
Honestly, it can be hard sometimes. You have an idea of what you want things to be, but I've also opened up, especially in the past couple of years, as far as getting new members, I've opened up to worrying less about the destination and more about the creative process that comes through it. So being open to Cody and Jake's like different style changes on the stuff that we have written together has made me a better musician for sure. And the end product for what we see as a Space Weather song, it's definitely so much better than if it was just me. So, and I'm hoping over time that chemistry is with us being songwriters continues to grow and get better. So,
I know you said you're kind of dipping into some heavier sounds on this new album, like taking from their influences of the progressive heavy metal world. Are there any other types of sounds or anything else that is maybe new for Space Weather that you're particularly excited about?
yeah, I mean, we just pull from so much stuff. I've been listening to a lot of hip hop, R&B. There's an artist I like. Her name's Georgia Smith. She's from the UK. She has a beautiful voice, but also the instrumentation behind her vocals is just been really inspirational for me. Listen to a lot of SZA. That's also been big. SZA has like a way with melody lines that like her vocal control is just insane. And I like to take that stuff from artists that I listen to a lot, and you could definitely hear some influence, in the vocals, instrumentation wise as well. We get into some things where we do some programmed electronic beats, for example, on Spaces, and it's really cool because we have like heavier parts too, and that really makes a nice dynamic contrast whenever you're doing something there and then suddenly you switch to the heavy stuff and maybe go back to that. So we definitely do that a couple times in this album.
Do you think maybe like opening up yourself in the band to some of these more ideas, whether it be the heavier bits, the more electronic bits, like, are you consciously trying to, not pigeon yourself into that post-hardcore label? Because like you said, you started out with maybe more of like a indie rock, math rock influence, and then morphed into this post-hardcore band. Are you now, I don't want to say like getting away from it, but just not letting yourself be pigeonholed into that lane?
Yeah, I guess we just don't want to be only defined as one type of genre. I mean, I like being called post-hardcore in the sense that post-hardcore is very wide. It does bring from all these different elements. But yeah, I mean, we're also getting bigger in the terms of dynamics. We're having songs that are softer. We're having songs that are heavier before. So in terms of like the umbrella, I mean, it's kind of funny. I think it's getting harder to define what we are. we definitely have some, crazy math rock, like Midwest emo influences on this album, like we have in stuff in the past, as far as like different types of tapping riffs and melodies. But yeah, this new album is it's a lot bigger in terms of like just all the different sounds that we're putting together, the different pedals that we use for effects. And we put acoustic guitar even on a song, which is really funny to say. That's like, oh, like, wow, big deal. But for us, it kind of is, just because that's something we haven't previously done. And we're trying to introduce it in a way that makes sense for us. So, but yeah, overall, new album, it's softer, but it's also louder. It's more creative, but in some ways, there are parts that are much more straightforward. At the end of the day, I feel like it's all really about the riffs. So.
Very cool. Well, that's very exciting. Can you maybe talk a little bit about what a release schedule may look like? What, if there's going to be a rollout coming out anytime soon?
I don't know. I guess the big thing about releasing a new album is we want to make sure that we get this right as far as how we release it. We're still trying to figure out, honestly, if we're going to release it independently or if we are going to shop around for a label. Labels are something that we talk about a lot as a band. We're like, should we do this or should we not? And to be honest, I see some bands that having a label is very good for them. Well, I've also seen some other bands that we know that having a label on, I'm not sure what the label is really doing for them. So that's something that we're trying to figure out. But it's a very good chance that this might also be another independent release from us. But it depends on so many factors. And one of the things that we want to do is we want to get a lot of music videos for these songs. Outside of just the normal, you have a single, you release it, it has a music video attached to it. We're trying to do more than just what is the typical release plan, so that when we do release the album, we have so much content available that it's impossible for people not to find it and to not know about it. We want this to really hit, because we know that the music is the best music we've ever written. So we want to make sure it catches as many eyes as possible.
And now, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe you did the music video for Wasted in Heaven. Is that correct?
The music video for Wasted in Heaven, I did edit the music video and I did shoot. There were two different cameras. One of them was this Blackmagic camera and the other one was my Canon. And I shot with that, and I ended up using a lot of the Canon shots, but I edited the whole thing as well. And that is something that I plan to do in the future. Maybe not for every single music video, but we had worked with people in the past where I had asked for the raw footage. This is just an example, but in 2023, we released Silent Hex at the end of February, and we didn't have a music video complete yet, but we had performance shots completed. And I talked to the videographer, and he sent me the raw files, and I edited those files myself for the sake of, we released a song, here's some performance to show behind it, not a full music video, but we also ran advertisements with that. And those were the best advertisements at that point that were run. And I do believe that I have the eye for it and the rhythm-based idea as far as editing, when to switch between different performers. So, and Wasted in Heaven was entirely a performance video. And we did do a lot behind the scenes, to make it look really pretty. But I believe I have that component of video editing down, and I only know that I'm going to get better from here too. But at the same time, it's also nice to hand that stuff off to a professional and get us results that maybe you wouldn't expect to get from yourself that are better. So
label, not label, still a question for you guys. It's an interesting crossroads for you to be at, because as far as maybe numbers go from Spotify and YouTube, I feel like Space Weather is one of the bands that actually has a pretty strong following. So what can you attribute that to over the years? Because at the end of the 2010s, there really has been a big boom of similar bands in the post-hardcore scene, but maybe have not done as well from like a metrics perspective per se?
Sure. I mean, I can't speak for everybody, but I know myself, I've been grinding a lot with making content, especially in the last couple of years. It's one of those unnecessary evils. I really hate social media. I don't like the internet, but I understand that it is something necessary to do to get the word out. And there's a lot of trial error involved with making content and figuring out what works and what doesn't work. And some things just seem to hit. And often, when I'm doing those videos and I see something that takes off on TikTok or Instagram or whatever, I always look for the direct correlation, on Apple Music, on Spotify, and all these other streaming services to see what works and what does not. And we've had some success in the past that, really brought those kinds of numbers up. But I'll tell you what, social media is just brutal sometimes. You can work on something for an hour, 2 hours plus for, a 20-second video, post it and it not do squat. And that can be really defeating sometimes. But I guess, at least with me making content, I also just have crazy confidence, maybe call it arrogance, maybe narcissism. I don't know. I just have a lot of confidence that I know the music I have written and continue to write with my band members. I know that it's good. It's like the music always comes first and the content always follows. But yeah, content is a big trial and error game. Some bands are, taking themselves very seriously, but as in their content is very serious. And sometimes we have found that funny content also seems to resonate with people more. And we are, we're very goofy guys. And we try to lean into that a little bit. And that seems to be what has been working for us at this point in time.
For this album, are you completely done, everything written and recorded already, or are we still going to be working on that throughout 2026?
We are very close to being done. So beginning of October, Cody, Jake, and we went down to Portland, went to record the second album with Chris. All the instruments are done. All the drums, the bass, and the guitar are done. And all the lead vocals are done. I am actually recording a lot of harmonies here at home. And it's a discussion that I've had back and forth with Chris for the whole entire month. We scoped out a period of time that we thought we could do with this album, but when we were getting closer to the end, it was very clear that this album was a lot bigger than anything we've ever done before. But at the same time, I've also made a lot of upgrades gear-wise in my home studio. So I am recording harmonies for the majority of the album at home. And I already sent some test ones to Chris and we went over them and he was very pleased with the fidelity of my recordings. And I've also learned from Chris a long time on how to just record in general and how to track, making sure things are lined up in the DAW, making sure that your performance is what you want it to be so that when you're tuning vocals, you know what to expect. So I've worked really hard over the past few years, and it's gotten to the point where Chris felt he's like, okay, we can record these harmonies at home. It's going to work just as well as his studio. So
to back up a little bit, can we talk a little bit about how you made that first contact with Chris Crummett? Because obviously a bit of a legendary producer in your scene. So just love to hear how you initially made that contact to have him work on that self-titled EP of yours.
Yeah, for sure. Chris is the man. He is super cool. He's a great guy. And when I started out, I just reached out to a bunch of producers. Ever since I was young, I've always been interested in, whenever I saw an album and I listened to it, at some point I was like, who actually produced this album? Because that has such a big factor in things. And I saw that Chris was tied to all of these records that I really enjoyed. But I was 23, 24. I'm just reaching out to people. And Chris's manager at the time, he hit me back up. And, I put basically all the money I had at the time into the record. But it was worth it because, I got to meet Chris. I got to work with him. And at the time I worked with him, I was very immature. But we have since worked on so many things together that we know each other really well. There's a big uh, in my opinion, there's a big client, you know, to the engineer versus the person who's like recording, like who's singing, playing guitar. There's a relationship there as far as like understanding each other and like how to speak to each other in a way where it gets the project across the finish line faster. And I feel like I have that with Chris really well. We understand each other, and we're able to work really well together. So, but yeah, Chris is awesome. I did not think that his manager at the time would have gotten back to me, but he did, and you know, the rest is kind of history from there. I kind of didn't look back. So
Yeah, I mean, all of your records have always sounded so good, so it makes a ton of sense. With working with somebody like that who was so well versed in the industry and had so much experience when you were pretty young and just getting this project off its feet. Was there anything that was either surprising to you or any like particular lessons learned that you've continued to carry forward as a musician over the past almost 10 years now?
oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, the first time I was there, I was a punk. I don't want to say I was rude, but I think I was in over my head. There is there's a big physical and mental load as far as going into a studio and recording everything by yourself. That was something that at the time I was like, I can do it. And Chris, whenever I got in direct contact with Chris before going there for the first time, he's like, these songs sound really cool. He's like, this is going to be like pretty tough though, just doing it by yourself. Like, are you sure that you're up for it? And I said, yes. And we got through it, but there were points in that process where uh, mentally and I was just, I was flatlining as far as, and it made some of the recording days tough, but Chris is a really patient guy and he knows how to work with people. And so that was something that I was able to carry with me though into future sessions that I worked with him, and just sessions in general of like, working in my home studio, working with others here at my home studio, where I'm able to, take everything in and manage it in a way that's can still make a good outcome, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So, are you recording other acts, other bands at your home studio? Is that something that you ventured into yourself now?
Not as far as like a full-time job, but I do some production work every now and again. I do vocal tuning for different artists. One of them is they're called Shadow Realm. They were formerly known as the Anime Band. It's a group of people here in Pittsburgh that do covers of anime intros, but the lyrics are in English, so they translate them. And one of their songs seems to be taking off on Spotify recently, but it's something that I tuned, and they just keep on coming back to me, and that's a pretty good relationship. But I don't really work with too many people very often, but I do have the desire to. It's mostly just getting my ducks in a row as far as getting this stuff taken care of and getting ahead with my writing schedule for future releases of Space Weather, which is always an ongoing thing. We're always writing.
Getting ahead of your writing schedule, a bit of a double-edged sword for you. Like, do you ever, write something and you're like, man, I love this, and then by the time you come around and it's like, okay, LP3, are you like, I'm kind of over this idea?
Yeah, that happens sometimes, for sure. It definitely happens. I think every single release we've ever worked on has been, I don't know, I can't think of like what the exact percentages would be, but there's always a part of it that is stuff that I've written previously where it's like I am my own internet explorer of music, where it's like I will probably include something in LP3 that I wrote like, at least 2 years ago or even more. Um, I mean, there's something in this new album that I wrote when I was 20 years old that I wanted to put into something for the longest time and just could not figure out how to put it together as far as like piecing together a chorus and a verse and stuff like that. And I was finally able to do it with this LP2, and I'm so happy about it. But that's what's funny, is that for everyone else is brand new, but for me, it's so old. Like, I was a completely different person when I was 20 years old. So it's going to be really cool, but that happens all the time. And there's still stuff from that far in my past, but I have ideas and I'll bring them up and I'm like, man, this was really cool. Sometimes I put that stuff in, and but other times too, like now that I do collaborate with other band members, there is a lot of stuff that gets made on the fly. But I will say, like, by the time we get to the actual studio, barely anything happens on the fly, except for maybe drums. Sometimes Jake will, like, he'll create a really cool fill like in the moment, and then we'll be like, all right, like now just do that take again because that was really cool. But vocals and guitars and stuff, that stuff is always very specific and like has to be done a certain way as this genre goes.
Do you find, that a lot of, like you said, to this genre, there's a lot of specificity to it. Do you find that to be like confining, or do you find that working within those confines like can help breed a little bit of creativity and use it as a strength for you?
I love it. I love it 95% of the time. I think there's very specific times where I'm like, man, this guitar riff is really cool, but now it's like you're very tied to this riff and the drums have to be played a certain way because of this riff. And it's like, what is the bass doing? So yeah, I guess in a way that can sometimes be a constraint, but at the same time, I love it because in a way it's almost like a challenge for me. I'm like, I have this really cool thing. How do I keep this thing in a way that is still connecting with me, but also I know will connect with other people, will resonate with other people? I love that part of the technical aspect of post-hardcore. I mean, you write I'll write the craziest breakdown sometimes. I'm like, but I really want to write, I want to write a vocal hook over it. And those two ideas themselves can be very challenging to do, but if I can make it happen and then I end up liking it, we ship it. So
talk a little bit about where you're at physically. I'd love to hear a little bit about the scene in Pittsburgh. Like, are you guys often playing shows around there? Or I know it's funny because a lot of the post-hardcore bands, they're just kind of scattered throughout the United States and more of the Western Hemisphere. So like, what is playing in Pittsburgh like for you all?
We love playing in Pittsburgh, but we don't do it often, and to be honest, we don't play shows very often, mostly because we're at the point right now where we're just holding off we want to tour, and we want to tour with bigger bands, and it makes more sense for us to kind of just own our stuff together and get into a way where, if we do sign with a label and that comes with more tours, that we are ready for that. We're always ready to tour. We got a van, we always rent a trailer. We always have merch on hand, but as far as like home shows go, we do play them, but only if it makes sense for us to do. I would love to play home shows, but the challenging aspect of that, again, that comes with our style of music, because our music is so intense and complicated that there's always going to be a period of like, well, we need to practice at least twice, usually 3 times before we even play a show. And to do that for a single one-off show can be kind of demanding on everybody's schedules. So, but if the show at this point in time, if the show is worth it, we would still do it for sure. As far as like being in Pittsburgh, there's actually not a lot of bands that really sound like us. It's kind of funny because the 2 bands that are probably closest related as far as like overall sound are these 2 bands. One of them's called Nefel, and that is a band that my drummer is also in. And then there's another one called Haven State, and that band, my guitarist Cody is in. So it's like these 3 bands, and they all share members. So, but Pittsburgh is a small city. It's a smaller city than, like Akron, Cleveland, Columbus. But we make do.
I imagine, can't say too much about a potential tour. I'm sure things are in the works, trying to line that up with whenever LP2 will drop.
I think so. Now, when LP2 drops, that's a bigger question. Again, we're trying to really take our time with this and make sure it's right. But I will say we do plan to tour this summer. And we do plan to release new music before we tour. So How much new music? I cannot say, but can say that we are planning to go to the West Coast this summer, and that is something that we wanted to do for a long time. And I honestly don't know if we're going to take a financial hit from doing so. The last time that we toured uh, for longer than a week was with our friends and with Sales Ahead. We went down to the Midwest. We hit a couple spots in Texas, shot down to Florida, and then made our way back up. And that tour was financially successful for us. We sold a lot of merch. People came to see us. You know, some people drove really far to see us, which also that happens all the time. Which I'm in awe of it. You know, we're so lucky to have such crazy good fans that really care about us, really care about the music, really care about the scene. It means a lot. But going to the West Coast, that's a big endeavor for us, being literally on the opposite side of the country. But we're going to do it. We want to give the fans there something. We know we have a lot of people there that will come out to see us. So, and we're hoping also by doing this that this is like our way of, you know, showing other bands, these bigger bands that can bring us on tour, be like, hey, you know, just so you know, we're capable of doing this, and we're ready to put it all down. So
Very exciting. Very exciting. So are we thinking just a West Coast tour, or are we maybe West Coast and back on the East Coast when you make your way back? What is that potentially looking like?
yeah, that is something to consider. That always happens as far as like, you know, we have a tour route planned with a band that I cannot say who they are because we have to wait till announce it first. But we have a tour route planned, and then at the end of that tour route, you know, there is space between where we're ending and our home base, where it's like we could play some shows on the way back. But also, we have been talking to some other bands that we really enjoy that want to do some East Coast stuff with us. So I think that's also something that might be in play, not until at least the second half of the year. So tours are so exciting, but man, they take so much planning.
And I imagine you are booking all those shows yourself, doing all of that on your
Yeah,
own.
yeah, it's me. I'm the problem. It's me. No, I am tag teaming that with someone else in the other band, and it is a lot of work. We're in a spot where we're good right now with how far ahead we're planning it, but it takes so many emails, you know, and you get a lot of no's before you get yeses, and sometimes after you get yeses, you get just kiddings. It's a lot, and that can take a strain, but teaming up the way that we're doing it is super helpful, and it's something that I'm actually more gracious of the people who are helping me because they're way better at this than I am. My brain is like just thinking about music, but I have to do the steps to go and play the music. So it's a process, and it can be a struggle for sure.
Well, I'm hoping it all works out. It sounds like it's going to be a very exciting year, hopefully. Now you said hopefully a little bit of music before the summer.
Yes, music guaranteed. We are guaranteed releasing something for the summer. And actually, I guess I can say this. Outside of new music, we do plan to release remixes of songs from our self-titled EP. So that is something that we want everybody to look forward to. We still have to get stuff ready for that, but I'll just say right now we do have a remix of West Coast Days that sounds so cool. You guys are gonna love it. You know, it's bringing elements from the EP, obviously, into a different genre completely. So it's something that we're really excited about.
Are there any, particular folks that you're able to mention that are working on any of these remixes?
I will say one of them, their name is Sunday Friend. It's Pittsburgh-based. He's a producer, songwriter. So this is the first time that we've gotten a chance to work with him, and he has a song out there with Kellen Quinn from Sleeping with Sirens, for example, that has done really well. He's a very creative guy, so it's cool to kind of bring those two worlds together in a way that is something very unique.
I have one last question. I ask every band that I interview this one last question. If I were to come to your city, what would be the one restaurant or one meal or one whatever it is I would have to eat before I leave?
I'm going to name two places because I cannot think of just one. One of them is a place near me. It's called Denise's Mediterranean Cafe. They do the best Turkish coffee I've ever had. I love coffee. I'm a big coffee guy, but they also have amazing kebabs. If you are into things like chicken, lamb kebabs, it is just out of this world. They're super nice people. The restaurant is super awesome. And then the other place, if you enjoy pizza, is called Benny Fiero's. They're the coolest pizza place. They're the unofficial pizza place of Space Weather. They don't know that, but for us, you know, when I think of pizza in Pittsburgh, I think of them. They have these ginormous slices, and their pizza boxes are so huge. But as far as like, you know, late night pizza, it's the end of a really long day. You want to get something good. That's where you go. Benny Fiero's.
Awesome. Great answer. If I'm ever in Pittsburgh, I got the two places I know I'm definitely going.
Absolutely. And, you know, there's so many. I mean, Pittsburgh, you know, people give Pittsburgh a lot of heat, but there's a lot of really good places in Pittsburgh as far as, you know, different types of cuisine, you know, Asian, like Italian. I mean, Korean barbecue. There's so many good spots.
Awesome. Awesome. So with that, you know, with the last minute or so left, is there anything you would like to so kindly shill to the audience?
You know, if you support us in any way, just thank you so much. It means the world. Please, if you see us post anything about, you know, announcements with new music, new tours, please share it and help us get the word out, because word of mouth is the most powerful thing that we have as a band. You know, bands spend a lot of money, you know, on marketing, getting their content, but word of mouth and the people, you know, comment on our stuff, you know, let your friends know what's up, because that is definitely the biggest tool that we have as the fans, and we have the best fans ever. So
Hell
yeah.
yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Tony. You were such a great guest to have. I really appreciate you doing this.
Dude, thank you for having me on. It's really awesome. I love what you're doing with the scene, talking to different people. It doesn't happen enough. There's so many really cool bands out there that are, you know, that are just waiting to be discovered by somebody out there that their next biggest fan, you know, is just one video away from being discovered. So I appreciate what you do for this, for the scene.
Thank you. Thank you.